What's up, fish tank people? FishTankTV.com, Dawson's Fish Tanks, bringing it to you on Monday, Memorial Day weekend Monday. That's right. Shout out to everybody who's got today off. Big shout out to everybody who's ever served in the armed forces or protected the stars and bars. Really appreciate it. And if you're watching this from another country, a lot of lazy Americans are actually taking the day off today, so it's nice. Here's what's going on. Had a comment yesterday on the video about Black Beard Algae, and guy was asking, he hadn't seen any videos done about Black Beard Algae, and I don't talk about stuff that I typically don't have unless someone asks me. So if someone asks me something and I typically don't have it, I won't talk about it, but I'm gonna give my opinion on this, even though I've never actually had Black Beard Algae. But I want to just talk about Black Beard algae in general from a high level, and talk about a few things with algae and how to prevent it. The 125 isn't looking too bad considering I was gone for 2 weeks. Got a little algae here and there, a couple of dead leaves that need trimmed, what have you. But whatever. I mean, it's working. So here's the deal with algae, folks. It's all about balance, and I've said it before and I'll say it again. Balance is everything. You gotta have balance in your tanks. You gotta have balance in your tanks. You've gotta have balance in your tanks. So here's what's going on with Black Beard Algae. From the best of my knowledge, and most algae, it's excess nutrients or excess light in your tank. That algae is kind of a simple form of a plant. It's just very, very simple. It's actually, I don't even really want to call it a plant, but it's very, very simple. So if you have excess nutrients, excess light, that stuff's going to grow. The trick, my friends, is to find that balancing point between how much light, how much nutrients. And I can't tell you exactly how it's going to work, because one tank will have more light than another, but you've got to find that balancing point. And it's tough because when you do a dirted tank, you start off kind of with a lot of out of balance. You'll have a lot of excess nutrients in your water column, and then you'll have, I don't know how much light you will put on your tank at first. I recommend lower levels of light because you have excess nutrients. Excess nutrients, excess light means significant amounts of algae could happen for you. So it's all about finding that balancing point. Some of the tricks to get rid of algae, and I'll talk about Black Beard algae, and I'll talk about floating green pea, green soup water, green algae like that. And then even, I consider this Java moss almost an algae. It's just a pain. This stuff down here, it's just, you got to manually remove it. Now if it's in your water column, you could use a UV sterilizer actually. I haven't actually done this in quite a while, but from the comments I got on the UV video, I did a couple of, I don't even know when that was. UV sterilizer would help. I don't think that's completely necessary. I think manually removing it is the best way to go. I recommend huge water changes for the water. I also recommend killing your lights, and I'm talking running them like 2, 3, 4 hours or none at all during the day. By the way, only run your lights 6 hours, folks. That'll solve a lot of problems. Had an individual comment on my actual channel. He had like 130 watts on a 55 with 6,700 Ks. I want to say that's too much light, bro. Cut that back to 1. The trick is to get your plant load high enough so that you outcompete the algae. Okay, so in this tank, quick story on this tank. On this tank, back in the day, before I had a YouTube channel, before I had Fish Tank TV, before I had 2 kids, I lived in Kentucky all by myself. I worked for myself. I had no friends, and I spent a lot of time with my fish tank. That's a shocker. I also spent a lot of time at a place called Just Fish, which has gone out of business. But I learned a lot about keeping fish. But when I focused fully on this tank, when I first dirted it, people thought I was nuts. But I had a real problem with green algae. I just had like tons and tons and tons and tons and tons of green water, and I couldn't get rid of it, and it was a pain in the butt. But I was running really, really high lights, and I had just dirted it, and I hadn't done excess water changes like I should have. So I had green water, beautiful lush plants, but green water. What I did to combat that was I added a ton of water sprite and a ton of duckweed. Water sprite first. And what water sprite does is a couple of things. One, it can grow up out of the water. I floated it, and it was able to absorb the excess nutrients quickly, and by absorbing that excess nutrients, it grew. It also provided more shade, so there was less ability for that light to get through. So I really recommend water sprite as far as algae control. Manually remove it though. Get your fingers in there, get dirty, get ugly, and get the stuff off of there, because that will help, just get it out of the tank. Huge water changes. And then people recommend dosing Flourish Excel, the carbon dioxide. It's not a bad way to go. Although with any like CO2, you want to be consistent with it. So it's kind of one of those things you're gonna have to mess with. People have had success with. I'd like to hear your opinion on what you've done to you know, fight algae. I think blackouts are good. I think really just getting the plants, a ton of plant growth in there is really the most important thing, because those plants will absorb the excess nutrients and outcompete them. Think of it as like too much nutrients in there, the plants can grow fast and outcompete them. That's why I recommend like beginner plants, plants that grow fast, plants that grow to the surface, plants that are get big, you know, like the swords or the water sprite. You know, these types of plants, jungle vile, sage, that just grow really, really quickly. It can do your tank a lot of good. So that's my opinion on algae. I'd love to hear some of your comments. Really like the snail comment yesterday. Some of the people talking about putting that lettuce on there. I don't know what happened to that comment. I haven't seen it, but that was really good advice. I actually want to try that out. I've heard of it before. I just hadn't messed with it. But you know, that's my take. Welcome new subscribers. Had some other housekeeping notes. Oh yeah, the greenhouse. I'm going to go with the 6x6s, I think. So I'm going to go back to that video and ask some questions to some of the kind folks on this channel that have been willing to help me out. So yeah, having a lot of fun. Happy Memorial Day weekend, folks. Later.